Lydia Mallory had only just opened the shutters of her candle shop when she spotted the tiny note resting beneath the front door. It was the first time she had ever seen anything like it, a small slip of paper, folded twice, with jagged edges as though it had been torn from a larger sheet. She stepped outside to stretch in the hush of dawn, then gingerly picked up the note. A sense of unease rippled through her, despite the countless times she had started her day by unlocking the shop with quiet confidence. In the early light, the harbour dazzled. Hollyhock Harbour was a snug seaside community where everyone seemingly knew everyone. Rows of pastel-painted shops lined the main street, their windows full of handcrafted items, freshly baked pastries, or, in Lydia's case, fragrant candles in every hue. But the note she held in her fingertips seemed out of place in a town where even mild disagreements rarely rattled the peace. She unfolded it and squinted at the message. An unseen threat grows. Beware the storms that brew behind closed doors. Though the words were cryptic, Lydia's heart fluttered. It was written hastily in black ink, the letters spidery and sharp. Perhaps it was meant for someone else. Or maybe it was simply a prank. Still, something about it felt personal, and as she slipped the note into her apron pocket, she caught herself scanning the empty street for any sign of who might have left it. The only movement came from seagulls drifting in lazy arcs over the harbour. She shrugged off her suspicions as best she could. She had a shop to open and candles to arrange for a special display. With the annual Summer Blossom Festival only 2 weeks away, the entire town bustled with excitement. Hollyhock Harbour came alive during festival season, as visitors from all over the region arrived to enjoy the scenic seaside and peruse local crafts. Lydia's beeswax tapers, lavender-scented votives, and intricate carved pillars were always popular among tourists. She couldn't let a mysterious note distract her from her busiest season. It was easy to forget about the slip of paper while she set out new candles in the display, a fresh batch of basil-lined pillars she had spent the entire week perfecting. She arranged jars of potpourri near the cash register to complement the vibrant scents filling the shop, but an uneasy feeling lingered. Every time the bells over the door chimed, announcing a customer's arrival, she would glance nervously at the threshold, half expecting to see another piece of paper tucked gently under it. Later that afternoon, Carol Fitzpatrick, who ran the pet supply store 2 doors down, popped in. Carol had bright eyes that sparkled with perpetual curiosity. They often exchanged quick updates about the day's gossip or the weather. This time, Carol's gaze fell on Lydia in a way that suggested she sensed something amiss. "You look a little frazzled," she noted, resting her forearms on the polished counter. "Everything all right?" Lydia offered a polite smile. "Oh, just a strange morning. I found a note slipped under my door. I'm not sure what to make of it." It felt good to share, even if only with someone who was, at best, a casual friend. Carol arched an eyebrow, intrigued. "A note, like a message. That's interesting. Did it say anything specific? It mentioned a looming threat, but it didn't say what. It warned me to beware of storms, if I read it correctly. It might just be someone playing a joke. Still, it spooked me." Carol drummed her fingers on the counter. "I haven't heard anything about pranks in town, but I'll keep an eye out." She winked, then picked up a small jar candle, labelled sea spray to sniff. This is lovely. I'll take one." Though Carol's warmth bolstered Lydia's spirits, she couldn't quite shake off the odd feeling. The day carried on as usual, with steady foot traffic and the usual friendly banter with customers. As Lydia closed up that evening, the memory of the note, the scratching letters, the ominous path of its message returned with a sharp pang of concern. With a final glance at the darkening street, she locked the door. Early the next morning, Lydia woke to the persistent tapping of rain against her bedroom window. She left her small cottage near the harbour, umbrella in hand, pushing against a rising wind. When she arrived at her shop, she found, to her dismay, another folded note waiting under the door. This time the edges were torn more raggedly, as if someone had yanked a scrap from a notebook on impulse. Catching her breath, she stooped to pick it up. With a wary glance around, she found no footprints or signs of anyone near the entrance. A drop of water from the awning splashed onto her cheek, but that was the only movement in the grey morning. She unfolded the damp note. Whispers carry secrets. The harbour's hush will soon break with the truth. Now her nerves prickled. She had no idea what secrets might lurk in the hush of the harbour. The message seemed dire, but also maddeningly vague. Tucking it carefully into the pocket of her coat, she started her day behind the counter, though every jingle of the shop's bell brought a fresh sense of alarm. Halfway through the morning, Lydia spotted her sister Clara through the shop window. Claire, older by 7 years and far more confident in conversation, was a painter who ran the small gallery adjacent to the local bakery. She was the perfect confidante, especially in matters that strayed from the ordinary. Lydia rushed out to invite her in. Clara brushed the raindrops from her jacket. "Smells heavenly in here as usual. Are you making eucalyptus bergamot today?" Lydia nodded, welcoming the familiar comfort of her sister's presence. "That's on the list, but I'm concerned about something else. I've started receiving cryptic notes. 2 in 2 days." She handed Clara the second note. Clara's expression grew grave as she read. "This is strangely ominous. Are they all like this?" "I've gotten 2 so far. Yesterday's mentioned storms brewing behind closed doors. Today's references secrets and a hush that will break soon." Lydia bit her lip nervously. "It's bizarre. No direct threats, but it's definitely unsettling." Clara shook her head. "Have you told anyone else? Maybe the local police should know." "Carol from the pet store knows about the first note. I was thinking about talking to Officer Dunbar, but it's probably nothing more than a prank. I don't want to waste his time if it's just mischief." Clara gave the shop a cursory glance out the window. "Keep an eye on things. If this escalates, definitely inform the authorities. Meanwhile, try not to worry too much. It might be harmless, or maybe meant for someone else. The next time you get a note, check for any clues. Watermarks, handwriting style, anything." Lydia nodded and forced a smile. Her sister's practical approach was reassuring, though Lydia decided then and there that if another note appeared, she would bring it to Officer Dunbar. The policeman was casual and friendly, with a taste for sweet pastries from the local cafe. He was also thorough when he needed to be. There was no harm in letting him know something strange was happening. The following day dawned quietly, the rain having subsided, leaving the streets glistening. Lydia, hoping to dispel thoughts of the notes, arrived at the shop with a new batch of scents, a decaf coffee candle for cafe lovers and a lemonade-scented swirl for those who yearned for summer sunshine. Yet before she inserted her key, she saw a thin slip of paper peeking from under the door. Her pulse jumped. She fumbled the key, stooping quickly to retrieve the note. It read, "Hearts can hide truth, but the shoreline never lies. The tide is rising, Lydia." This time, her name was explicitly on the note. Whoever was writing these messages knew her, or at least knew of her. The mention of the tide rising made her skin crawl. Without hesitation, she locked the door behind her once she was inside, then marched straight to the phone on the counter. She dialed the police station and asked for Officer Dunbar, explaining her situation in a hushed voice. Within minutes, the policeman arrived. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with an easygoing manner that often put townspeople at ease in stressful moments. Lydia showed him the 3 notes, letting him handle them gently. He examined the handwriting, frowning. "They're consistent, likely the same person. Do you have any idea who might be sending these? Any unhappy customers, or perhaps an ex who could be playing mind games?" Lydia shook her head vehemently. "I haven't had any major disagreements with anyone. My customers are all lovely, and there's no ex in my life with a penchant for cryptic notes." Officer Dunbar jotted down some information in a small notebook. "I'll keep these for now. If you get any more, call me immediately. I'll see if I can analyze the paper or the handwriting. In the meantime, stay cautious. Make sure your doors are locked at night and try not to linger alone after dark." That evening, Lydia closed the shop as usual, but couldn't help glancing over her shoulder every few minutes. Hollyhock Harbour was peaceful. The street lamps cast gentle halos of light, and the only noises were the spoken goodnights of neighbours heading home or shutting their storefronts. Still, she felt the prickling sense of being watched. She rushed home, locking the door twice behind her. The next several days brought an unusual tension to the otherwise calm harbour. Officer Dunbar made quiet rounds but found no immediate leads. Lydia had no more notes slip under her door until 3 days later. That morning she almost willed there to be no piece of paper on the ground. Upon arriving at the shop, she found the threshold clear. She sighed in relief, then heard a rustling from the flower box just to the right. Tucked among the begonias lay a small folded note. Ball's hope gave way to dread. She picked it up, her hands trembling. "A storm can be man-made. Seek the truth at the docks." Unlike the other notes, this one was scrawled in hurried cursive. The mention of the docks triggered a memory. She recalled the heated discussions about the new commercial project rumoured to be built offshore. The harbour's residents had been fiercely divided over it. Some said it would ruin the town's charm. Others felt it might bring new jobs. She placed the new note inside an envelope and headed straight for the police station. Officer Dunbar was out, so she left the note with the station clerk, who promised to alert him. Feeling somewhat reassured, Lydia decided to visit the docks herself to see what might be happening. The Hollyhock Harbour docks were modest, lined with fishing boats, a handful of pleasure crafts, and an occasional charter vessel. The tang of salt water and fish hung in the air. She strolled along the planks, dwarfed by tall masts. Fishermen were unloading crates of the day's catch, calling out greetings or bargains to passers-by. She noticed a small commotion near the end of one pier. A tall man in a slicker was conversing in hushed, tense tones with another fisherman. Lydia recognized the tall man as Jonathan Graves, a local entrepreneur and real estate developer who'd been pushing for the new harbour expansion. If anyone might have secrets swirling around them, it was him. Rumours claimed that Jonathan had leveraged hefty loans to fund the project, and that if it didn't move forward, he would be in serious trouble financially. She tried not to stare, but her curiosity burned. The fisherman shoved something into Jonathan's hands, a stack of papers or possibly a ledger. Jonathan glanced at them, muttered something, then slid them under his jacket. Before Lydia could look away, Jonathan caught her eye. He paused, nodded curtly, then strode away with hurried steps. Her heart thumped. The entire exchange felt furtive, and the fisherman looked uneasy. But Lydia didn't have any reason to suspect direct wrongdoing other than the suspicious way they'd parted. She moved on, eventually leaving the docks. That night she carefully locked up her shop with a fresh swirl of emotions: concern, curiosity, and apprehension. No new notes arrived for another 2 days. A part of Lydia felt relief, while another part dreaded the next cryptic message. During that time she chatted with Carol, and even sought Clara's advice. Clara insisted Lydia be cautious and keep people informed. Lydia heard no word from Officer Dunbar and assumed he had yet to uncover any solid leads. On a soft Sunday morning, she was tending to the scented candle vats in the back of her shop, a place she loved for its warmth and comforting aromas, when she heard a soft knock at the back door. It was unusual for anyone to come there. Wiping her hands on her towel, she unlatched it. To her surprise, the fisherman she'd seen handing something to Jonathan waited there, cheeks flushed from brisk morning air. He slipped inside without waiting for permission, casting a nervous glance over his shoulder. "You're Lydia Mallory, right? The one who's been getting those notes?" His voice had an anxious tremor. Lydia nodded slowly. Up close, she recognized him as Georgie Matthews, a long-time local fisherman, known for his no-nonsense opinions on everything from boat maintenance to local politics. "I shouldn't be here," Georgie blurted, "but I heard you might be in danger. I heard talk. Something about forcing you out of your building, the expansions. People might be trying to intimidate you, and others like you." Lydia's eyes widened. "Intimidate me? But the notes haven't asked for anything. They're just warnings about a looming threat and storms approaching?" Georgie swiped a hand over his face, as though wishing he could rid himself of his worries. "Jonathan Graves is desperate to get his harbour expansion project approved. He's now turning to underhanded methods. Rumour says if you and a few other vocal shop owners stand against him at the council meeting next week, the project might be stalled. He can't risk that. He's up to his ears in debts, and if he doesn't push this through, he loses everything." Lydia felt a chill. "But I'm not out there publicly opposing him. I haven't participated in any of the petitions or spoken out at council meetings." Georgie shrugged helplessly. "Doesn't matter. He might believe you support the folks who want to preserve old Hollyhock Harbour. Maybe he's just trying to keep everyone too scared or distracted to show up at the meeting. Then—" Lydia hesitated, recalling how ominous the notes felt. "Why are the notes warning me instead of threatening me directly? Could it be someone trying to help me?" "This is bigger than me," Georgie muttered, shaking his head. "All I know is there are papers, records that could expose Jonathan's shoddy financial dealings. If those records come to light, he could be done for. But he's determined to make sure they don't, and he's the type who finds ways to hush people up. You handed him something on the docks the other day. What was it?" Georgie fidgeted. "Just a ledger from one of the fisheries. The building codes, some shipping logs, but nothing important enough to bring him down. If you want the real evidence, talk to Rosalie Pettigrew at the Realty office. She has the documents. She's the one who's been trying to blow the whistle on Jonathan for months." With that, Georgie hurried out into the alley, leaving Lydia alone, thoughts churning. Could the notes be from Rosalie? Or was someone else trying to steer Lydia toward discovering Jonathan's wrongdoing? The bigger question remained, why her? After closing early that afternoon, Lydia made her way to Pettigrew Realty, a small brick building on a quieter side street. Rosalie Pettigrew was inside, scanning files in a manila folder. When Lydia entered, Rosalie glanced up, a flicker of concern in her eyes. She was a petite woman, her gingery hair tied up in a bun that accentuated the sharp lines of her face. "I need your help," Lydia said softly. "I've been receiving cryptic notes about a looming threat, storms and dangers in the harbour. This may relate to Jonathan's project. Georgie mentioned you might have evidence of wrongdoing." Rosalie's face hardened. She nodded firmly. "I do. I have property deeds, loan agreements, and suspicious financial statements that show Jonathan is effectively scamming investors and paying bribes to get the harbour expansion approved. These notes you're getting, I believe they're from someone else who realized it too. Someone who doesn't want to confront Jonathan directly, but hopes to nudge you or me to expose the truth." She unlocked a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder stuffed with photocopies. "Look, the last thing I want is for you to be in danger, but if we don't bring this to light, Jonathan might bulldoze us all in his quest for profit. I was planning on presenting these documents at the council meeting next week. I already have an appointment with Officer Dunbar tomorrow morning." Lydia flipped through the pages. At first glance, the evidence looked stark. Suspicious bank statements, unauthorized construction permits, and rumored payoffs to local officials. When they finished reviewing the documents, Lydia thanked Rosalie and left. She felt both rattled and newly determined. The notes were vague, but they pointed to secrets, hidden truths, and rising tides. Jonathan's unscrupulous plans could devastate the harbour if he got his way. The threat might not be physical, but financial ruin for the town, and perhaps intimidation to keep people from opposing him. That evening, Lydia sat at her kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, replaying the day's events. She had recognized a recurrent phrase in the notes: storms, hush, secrets, tide. All suggested an unraveling of something precarious. Perhaps the storms were metaphors for the scandal that was about to break. The next morning, a new note appeared under the door. Lydia found it half hidden behind a potted geranium. Confront the storm. Truth will shelter the worthy. It sounded like a final urging, a call to action. She called Officer Dunbar, telling him she'd uncovered potential evidence against Jonathan Graves, orchestrated by Rosalie Pettigrew. To her relief, Dunbar said he would open a deeper investigation, including verifying the documents. She also informed him of the fisherman's remarks and Jonathan's suspicious behavior at the docks. Later that day, Councilman Harlow, one of the more outspoken voices in the debate, stopped by for a fresh handful of scented tea lights. Lydia summoned her courage and told him privately about the secrets swirling around Jonathan. Councilman Harlow grew quiet, then nodded gravely. I've heard rumors. If you and Rosalie have evidence, bring it to the meeting. We'll handle it properly. The day of the council meeting arrived. Hollyhock Harbour's town hall was packed with residents, older couples in neat sweaters, local shop owners, fishermen in grizzled raincoats, and a few curious onlookers. Lydia took a seat near the front, heart fluttering with nervous energy. Rosalie Pettigrew stood at the podium, presenting her case with calm determination. She laid out the questionable documents. Gasps rose among the council members when the payoffs and irregularities became evident. Jonathan Graves, seated in the audience, looked livid. He tried to interrupt, blustering that the papers were doctored lies. But Councilman Harlow held up a hand. We'll have law enforcement verify them, Mr. Graves. If they're legitimate, the council will have no choice but to halt the harbour expansion until a full investigation can be done. Jonathan rose from his seat in an explosive rush, ignoring the civility protocol. This is a smear campaign by people who want to keep this town drowning in nostalgia. He attempted to storm out, but found Officer Dunbar blocking his path in the aisle. The uniformed policeman eyed him calmly. Mr. Graves, I have a few questions, Dunbar said. We can discuss them at the station. A hush fell over the chamber. Jonathan's face reddened. He tried to protest, but even he must have realized it was an uphill battle. As the stunned crowd murmured, Officer Dunbar guided him out of the room. It was left to Councilman Harlow to calm everyone, reassure them that the expansion project was on indefinite hold, and vow that the truth would come out. Afterward, outside the meeting hall, Lydia exhaled a long-held breath. Carol from the pet store ran up to give her a warm hug, exclaiming how it was almost like a real detective story. Clara clasped Lydia's hand, pride shining in her eyes. Rosalie approached with a mixture of relief and fatigue, quietly thanking Lydia for lending her voice to help. Your findings, your notes, they helped us bring this forward. Lydia shook her head. I just followed the hints. By the way, do you know who wrote them? Rosalie tilted her head. I assumed you had an ally on the inside. Could it have been Georgie Matthews? He swore he wasn't behind them, only that he heard rumours. Or maybe it's someone who overheard Jonathan's threats and worried enough to warn me? If they reveal themselves, I'll have to thank them for the cryptic push. The next day, Lydia opened her shop much as she always did. Except now, the weight that had settled across her shoulders felt lifted. The threat had been real, but it was less about personal harm and more about protecting the town from a reckless developer. She resumed her daily routine, organizing candles, chatting with customers, and breathing in the serenity of her craft. Yet she occasionally glanced at the front door, half expecting another note. As the morning passed without incident, she allowed herself to hope the messages had accomplished their purpose and that whoever left them felt their job was done. Right before lunchtime, Carol swung by, brimming with excitement. The whole town's buzzing. Everyone's relieved the expansion has paused. And guess who's rumoured to be investigating Jonathan's finances now? State officials. He could be in deeper trouble than we originally thought. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Did you ever figure out who sent those notes? Lydia shook her head. No, but if they're reading the local news, I think they'll be satisfied with the outcome. With a warm smile, Carol headed out, leaving the familiar chime of bells behind her. Just as Lydia was turning back to her candle displays, she noticed a small envelope wedged discreetly by the doorframe. Her heart leapt, but this time a wave of curiosity tempered the apprehension. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single slip of paper with neat, quiet corners light. Trust that in quiet corners some still watch over you. There was no signature. A rush of gratitude welled up in Lydia as she slipped the note into her apron pocket. Perhaps she would never know who had orchestrated those cryptic messages warning her of the hidden threat. But she felt a deep sense of connection, not only to her candle shop but to the entire town. Sometimes it took a faint, flickering beacon to expose the darker truths lurking under the surface. Now, Hollyhock Harbour could continue to glow in the gentle way it always had, its community safe, at least for the moment, from the storms of greed and secrecy. Lydia breathed in the comforting blend of lavender, citrus, and beeswax that infused her shop, savouring the knowledge that the looming threat had passed. Or perhaps it had simply receded, like an outgoing tide, no longer poised to destroy the tranquility she worked so hard to cultivate. She turned the sign on the door to open, prepared to share the warmth of her handcrafted candles with the faithful locals and new visitors seeking solace along the harbour. If another storm ever came, she and the town would be ready, watchful, resolute, and guided by the faint, guiding lights that had kept Hollyhock Harbour safe for generations.